Hi and welcome back to Will Henry's Workshop, where for the time being, Kimbers are us. I've got the 7x57 barrel in the lathe. Once again, it's set up in the headstock. It's been dialed in at the breech and the muzzle. And I've already roughed the chamber with the drill and checked to make sure it's running concentric. I put the dead center in the tailstock, and we've swept it to make sure that it's still set center. I only do that because it's not impossible that I've moved it and forgotten. So I double check when I get ready to cut the chamber. So now we're ready to cut this 7x57 chamber, and I'll do that, and then we'll cut the coned breech just as we did before. I was going to make a gauge so that I could just duplicate the cones on the Kimbers without fooling around with the feeler gauge and so on. But you know what, it's not that much trouble, and as long as I've got the actions here, why not? So I'll go ahead and do that. But the extractor cuts, I'm going to wait and do all of them together. I've got this 7x57 and then two 338-06s and then a 243, all on Kimbers. They'll all be the same, so when I set up the palm trim attachment on the lathe, I can just go ahead and do them all, and it'll save a little time. And when you're doing a bunch like this, that's kind of the easy way to do it. The one of the 338-06s, the barrel's already prepped. The other one I have to contour, so when I get this chamber done and get the cone to breech cut, then it'll be a little while before I get everything else done. But I don't think that's going to be an issue. I've got time to do them all in a batch like that, so that's what I'll do. So for now, I'll turn the camera around, and of course a lot of this is just simply repetitious, and there's nothing new, but nonetheless I'll show part of the chambering operation, and just to kind of reinforce what I do here. At some point I'm going to move this camera up to the nest up back so that you can see a little better, and for right now, I'm going to pause you. There we go. There may have been a little mild disorientation when you found yourself suddenly jerked across the floor. But here we go. I'll take the beginning cuts. Once again, using rigid nuclear oil, which I've been using for years. And again, when I start reaming, it doesn't bother me to push it a little bit. And I'll cut generally 3/8 to a 1/2 inch on the first cut. There we go. Now this particular reamer is a 7x57 reamer, which I had spec'd as kind of a match reamer, and the throat on it I set to take 162 grain Hornady match bullets seated to the base of the neck, and as it turns out, that's a pretty good length for everything. So that's what this one does. It's a little closer, a little tighter on the neck, and a little bit, but the body is pretty normal. So all in all, it's like I say, a pretty good hunting rifle reamer. It'll, factory ammunition works fine, and or whatever hand loads the person wants to use. Anyway, I like the reamer. That's what I used for my own 7x57s, and it works out well. But once again, I'm not going to make you watch the whole operation here, and I'm just going to pause you for a little bit. Here we are back again, and no doubt with a little bit of disorientation in the movement between times. So I've gone ahead and I've reamed the full amount that I had drilled before out of there. Then I went ahead and drilled another 3/8 of an inch just to make things easier on the reamer, and now I'll finish up the chamber. A little more about reamers. As I said, this particular one I spec'd as a match reamer, but it works quite well as a hunting rifle reamer as well. And I have to say, this particular reamer is maybe the best one that I've bought from this particular company. It almost never picks up a chip. It cuts smoothly, it doesn't chatter. Like everything about it is just wonderful. Now, I've bought reamers from a number of different sources. This one's a Pacific Tool and Gauge. I've also bought reamers from JGS, Max Climber, and Manson. And the first reamers that I bought from Hugh Henriksen. And I honestly think that the Hughes are the best. I don't know if Hugh Henriksen was ever taught how to make a bad reamer, and consequently he's never done so, at least that I ever saw. And so his reamers are excellent. And not to say that anyone else's aren't any good, but it's just I particularly like the ones from Henriksen. But like I say, this reamer from Pacific Tool and Gauge is really excellent. Now, as usual, when I'm making the later cuts, I always check each cutting edge to make sure that it hasn't picked up any chips. And like I say, this particular reamer generally doesn't. Sneak around here and The other thing about chambering reamers, unless there's something really wrong with the reamer, and that's unlikely, your reamer is going to cut to size. It's going to cut exactly to the size it was made at, and if it's not doing that, then chances are the problem is with your setup and not with the reamer. So it is that if your reamer's offset, you'll cut a chamber that's oversized at the rear, and that's offset, high, low, left, right, doesn't matter. It'll cut oversized. If your reamer chatters, then you'll actually get what indicates to be undersized at the throat, but it's just that it's misshapen with flutes in it. And so, like I say, in general, the reamer is going to cut to size. Now, in the event of a reamer that chatters, there's various reasons for that. One reason is if the reamer is not supported well, it might have a tendency to chatter. If your setup is flexible in some way, if you've got slop in your headstock bearings, those are things that can induce some chatter. If you're not able to hold it fairly steady, that can induce chatter. But primarily, if a reamer has a real tendency to chatter, it's likely because it was ground wrong. And the reamers, each flute, each cutting edge, should be staggered, and they're always cutting a little ahead of center. None should ever be behind center. So, and each one is, for instance, with a 6 flute reamer, maybe one flute is 2/1000ths of an inch ahead of center. The next one is 4/1000ths, then 6/1000ths, then 8/1000ths. And so on, and that way each cutting edge is in a slightly different place, and because they're ahead of center with the face vertical, they cut more like a scraper, and they won't tend to dig in. If they're cut on center, they'll have a tendency to dig in, and if they're all the same, each one falls into the same cut as the one before it, and you get chatter. And there are ways to combat chatter, and I could demonstrate that if I chattered one, but I don't really want to do that. So there you go. We'll see what happens, and if I ever do chatter one, I'll show you how we deal with it. But once again, I'm going to pause you, and through no fault of your own, you being the camera, you're in my way, and I'm just going to shift you around. Okay, so there we are back again. So now I'm down to where I'm about to take the last cut. Now, I made this tenon 0.890 long, and my headspace measurement is, consult the booty board here, 861. So that means it's got to be 29/1000ths below the back face here, and right now I'm 12/1000ths below. So I've got to go 17. And in actual fact I'll go 19 because, as usual, I want to leave, I want to have 2/1000 of an inch for crush. When everything's tightened up, then I'll end up at 0. And as usual, on this last cut, I feed it very slowly in an attempt to get the best finish I can. So I can minimize the amount of polishing I might have to do. There we are, right at 33 thousandths, which is, like I say, take away the crush, that'll give us 31, and Bob's your uncle. So, so that's that part, and then, as with the other Kimbers, it'll be a matter of cutting the cone breech now, and then the extractor cut. His 7x57 will be ready. I really think that, shift you around again here. I really think you have to look pretty hard to find cartridges that work better than the original Mauser cartridges, the 7x57, the 8x57, and the cartridges derived from them. You know, with the 7x57, it'll push 160 grain bullets, up to about 2750 or so. And now the 280 Remington, which is a larger case, will essentially do with a 175 what the 7x57 does with a 160. And there's an actually improved version of the 7x57, and in truth, when loaded to the same pressures, it doesn't do a heck of a lot. And but a lot of people like to think that it does all sorts of things, but the reality is that the standard 7x57 comes within probably about 35 feet a second when they're loaded to the same pressure. But anyway, that's just my comments. I really like those cartridges. You know, they feed well, they work well, they're easy to reload for. And in the case of the 7x57, it's pleasant to shoot. Now, the modern version of it, of course, is the 7mm Remington, and that's another really excellent cartridge in my view. But anyway, that's enough for me. And so for now, I'm Will Henry, out.